The night was heavy with silence, broken only by the sound of wheels screeching on cracked asphalt. A rusted pickup truck slowed at the edge of a lonely highway, headlights cutting through the mist. Inside, a man with a sharp jaw and cold eyes gripped the steering wheel, his lips pressed thin with indifference. He muttered curses under his breath, as if the dog sitting in the back seat were nothing but a burden. The animal's chest heaved, his amber eyes wide with dread, ears pinned back, heart racing with confusion. Jake said, "Useless mutt, you'll fend for yourself now." The door slammed, and the trembling dog was shoved out, paws skidding across the wet pavement. For a heartbeat, he stared at the retreating truck, tail low, not believing what had just happened. His scar along the right shoulder burned under the neon glow of a flickering highway sign. Rain began to fall, soaking his wiry fur as he let out a howl that pierced the emptiness, echoing into the dark. The dog lowered himself to the ground, his entire body quivering between fear and determination. His voice rose again in a desperate cry, one that carried the weight of betrayal and a plea for hope. The highway stretched endlessly in both directions, yet Max remained rooted, his paws trembling as if glued to the soaked pavement. His chest heaved with shallow breaths, heart pounding against ribs like a drum of despair. He lifted his nose to the air, searching for sense of safety, but only the sharp tang of asphalt and rain filled his senses. His body shivered violently, the cold seeping into his bones as thunder rumbled in the distance. "Don't leave me," he whimpered into the emptiness, his voice fading against the storm. The headlights of a distant vehicle appeared for a moment, forcing him to dart into the tall grass by the roadside, body pressed flat, ears low, fearing further cruelty. The earth smelled of mud and oil, harsh reminders of his abandonment. Yet within his trembling body, a spark lingered, fragile but unbroken. His eyes, though brimming with pain, still glimmered with a faint determination. He was not ready to surrender. The storm roared, lightning splitting the night sky, and Max closed his eyes, silently vowing to fight for survival. The storm grew harsher, pounding rain against the earth with relentless fury. Max's legs carried him shakily into the shadows of a roadside underpass, seeking shelter from the violent sky. His body dripped water, forming dark streaks on the cracked concrete floor. Shivering, he curled into himself, tail wrapped tightly around his soaked body, eyes darting at every sound. Cars roared above, their vibrations shaking the ground beneath him, reminding him of the world that had just cast him aside. He pressed his scarred shoulder against the cold wall, wincing at the pain that flared with every breath. Hunger gnawed at his stomach, sharper than the chill of the storm. He whined softly, the sound bouncing against the cavernous walls of the underpass. "Why did you leave me?" his heart cried, though his voice fell silent. Yet, deep in his gaze, a flicker of defiance fought to remain alive. Even in betrayal, he clung to the hope of belonging. The night stretched on endlessly, each hour colder than the last. Max stirred restlessly, ears twitching at the sound of a rustle in the darkness. From the edge of the underpass, two glowing eyes peered back at him, small and uncertain. A tiny kitten stepped forward, its body frail, fur matted by rain, trembling as it struggled against the storm. Max lifted his head, muscles tense, yet his instincts softened at the sight of the fragile creature. The kitten mewed weakly, a sound nearly lost in the roar of thunder, but it reached Max's ears like a plea. He lowered his head, his scar glistening under the dim light, breathing slowly to show he meant no harm. For a moment, silence bound them, predator and prey no longer enemies, but two souls broken by the same cruelty of abandonment. Max shifted his body slightly, leaving a dry patch of concrete for the kitten to approach. The storm outside raged on, but within the underpass, a fragile bond was born. Rain softened to a steady drizzle by dawn, painting the horizon in muted gray. Max lay awake, his body heavy with exhaustion, yet his gaze remained locked on the small figure curled against his side. The kitten had pressed herself close during the night, shivering until sleep claimed her. Max's scarred shoulder ached, but he did not move, unwilling to disturb her fragile rest. "I'll protect you," his heart whispered, though no sound left his muzzle. The morning light seeped into the underpass, revealing two survivors bound by circumstance. For the first time since his betrayal, Max felt a reason to rise. His chest swelled with a protective resolve, stronger than hunger, stronger than fear. The world outside remained harsh, yet within this fragile companionship lay a spark of hope. As Luna stirred and opened her green eyes, she blinked up at him, a quiet trust forming in the silence. The storm had left scars, but it had also delivered an ally. Morning sunlight crept into the underpass, soft yet cold against the damp concrete where Max lay. His muscles ached, his scar pulsing faintly, but his gaze remained fixed on the tiny form beside him. The kitten stirred, stretching her fragile limbs, blinking at the brightness as if the world itself felt too large for her. Max nudged her gently with his nose, a silent reassurance that she was no longer alone. The distant sound of footsteps echoed faintly, pulling his ears upright. A young woman appeared at the edge of the underpass, carrying a worn satchel, her face marked with exhaustion yet softened by kind eyes. She stopped, startled by the sight of the battered dog and frail kitten pressed together. Anna whispered, "You poor souls," her voice trembling between pity and determination. Max tensed, body rigid with distrust, his growl low, protective over the small creature at his side. Yet something in Anna's eyes held no cruelty, only compassion. For the first time since betrayal, Max sensed the possibility of care. Anna crouched slowly, her movements deliberate, as though approaching fragile glass. She extended her hand, palm upward, letting the scent of dried herbs escape from her satchel. Max's growl deepened, ears pinned back, eyes narrowed in warning. Luna shifted nervously, pressing herself into Max's side, yet her gaze lingered on Anna's hand with cautious curiosity. Anna whispered, "It's all right, I won't hurt you," her tone low and steady, carrying the weight of countless promises kept before. Max's mind flickered with memories of hands that once offered comfort, then cast him aside. His body shook with the battle between fear and longing. For a moment silence consumed them, broken only by water dripping from the underpass ceiling. Then, slowly, Max edged forward, sniffing the air, his nostrils flaring as Anna's scent carried no cruelty. Luna mewed, breaking the stillness, her small voice urging trust. Max held his ground uncertain, but hope began to stir faintly beneath the layers of pain. The kitten's hunger betrayed her fear, her tiny body trembling as she stepped forward, inch by inch toward the offered hand. Max's ears twitched, his body coiled like a spring, ready to shield her from harm. Anna remained perfectly still, her breath shallow, eyes glistening with quiet hope. Luna reached the edge of her fingers and sniffed, whiskers brushing against her skin before retreating again. Anna's lips curved in a fragile smile, whispering, "Brave little one." Max studied the exchange, his chest rising and falling heavily, his loyalty pulling him between caution and the faint echo of trust he once knew. Hunger gnawed at him too, sharper now than the ache of betrayal. The smell of food from Anna's satchel grew stronger, tugging at instincts he could no longer ignore. He lowered his growl, though his body remained rigid, scar glistening as the sunlight deepened its mark. In that quiet standoff, survival and compassion slowly began to entwine. Anna slowly reached into her satchel, pulling out a small piece of bread wrapped in cloth. She tore it carefully, placing a fragment on the ground before them. Luna sniffed, then lunged with surprising speed, nibbling desperately at the morsel. Max's amber eyes followed every motion, his hunger flaring. But he remained still, guarding rather than taking. Anna whispered, "There's more if you want it," her voice carrying gentle insistence. Max stepped forward, paused slow and deliberate, his scar pulling at his skin as his body tensed. He lowered his head, sniffing the bread before taking it softly between his teeth. The taste was plain, yet to him it was salvation. His eyes flickered upward, meeting Anna's gaze for the briefest of moments. In her steady stare he found no malice, only care. For the first time, his growl faded into silence. Trust had not yet bloomed, but the soil had been broken. The bond was fragile, stitched together by hunger and need, but it was a beginning. Anna leaned back, giving space, showing no desire to control. Max remained cautious, his body half curled around Luna, protective yet less rigid than before. His breathing slowed, his eyes still wary, but no longer aflame with fear. Anna whispered, "You've been hurt, but you're safe now," her words threading into the silence like a quiet promise. Luna nestled closer into Max's chest, purring faintly, her small voice vibrating against his scar. The underpass no longer felt entirely like a prison of shadows, but like a fragile refuge, one that could hold the pieces of broken trust. For the first time since betrayal, Max closed his eyes not from despair, but from a fleeting sense of rest. The storm had left him shattered, yet in this human's presence, a spark of hope stirred, fragile but real. The fragile trust that began in the underpass quickly met its first test. Hunger continued to gnaw, and Max's body ached with fatigue. Anna tried to coax him further from the shadows, but the memory of betrayal still clung to him like a wound that would not close. He stood at the edge of the concrete, rain dripping from his muzzle, amber eyes fixed on the world beyond. Anna urged softly, "Come with me. You can't survive here." Her words echoed with sincerity, but Max hesitated, his chest rising sharply with each breath. Luna mewed, shivering as she pressed against his scarred shoulder. The storm had passed, yet the sky was still gray, filled with warning. Max stepped forward, but then froze at the sound of distant barking, sharp and threatening. His ears shot upright, tail rigid, body tense with alarm. Danger was not gone, it was approaching, and he knew survival meant bracing for the cruelty of man and beast alike. The barking grew louder, echoing down the road like a warning bell. A pair of stray dogs appeared, lean and wild-eyed, teeth bared as they approached. Max stepped forward instinctively, his scar pulling taut as his muscles tensed. Luna hissed softly, shrinking back into the safety of shadow. Anna's breath caught as she whispered, "Stay back." Her eyes darted between Max and the advancing strays, fear written in every line of her face. Max lowered his head, lips curling into a growl, his amber gaze locked on the threat. Every instinct screamed at him to fight, but exhaustion gnawed at his body. Still he refused to yield. The strays circled closer, hackles raised, claws scraping against wet pavement. Max held his ground, his body forming a barrier between Luna and danger. The world had already abandoned him, but he would not abandon the fragile life pressed behind him. The first stray lunged, its teeth snapping in the air. Max met it head-on, his snarl ripping through the silence as his body collided with raw force. His scar flared with pain, but adrenaline surged, giving him strength. He bit down, driving the dog back with furious precision. The second stray circled, waiting for an opening, growling like thunder rolling close to the ground. Anna shouted, "Stop!" but her voice was swallowed by the chaos of battle. Luna pressed herself against the wall, her small frame trembling as her green eyes followed Max's every move. The fight was brutal, each clash sending sprays of rain and dirt across the pavement. Max staggered once, blood staining his fur, but his resolve never wavered. Betrayed, abandoned, scarred, he still fought with everything he had, not for himself, but for the fragile lives behind him. Survival had become his only truth. Max staggered backward, his shoulder bleeding, his legs shaking under the strain. The stray circled again, sensing weakness. Anna rushed forward, her voice cutting through the chaos as she hurled a stone, striking near the snarling dogs. They snarled at her intrusion but hesitated, their eyes shifting between Max and the determined woman. She shouted again, her tone sharp with authority, buying Max a breath of time. Luna let out a small cry, the sound slicing through Max's haze of pain, pulling his focus back to his purpose. He surged forward with renewed fury, snapping at the nearest stray, forcing it to retreat. His growl thundered through the road, a declaration that he would not break. The dogs finally backed away, their snarls fading into the distance as they disappeared into the fog. Max collapsed onto his side, panting, his body trembling from both pain and triumph. Silence fell heavy after the battle, broken only by Max's ragged breaths. Anna knelt quickly at his side, her hands trembling as she reached toward his wound. Max growled weakly, his body torn between instinct and trust. Anna whispered, "It's okay, let me help," her voice steady but filled with worry. Luna crawled closer, pressing against Max's chest, purring faintly as if to soothe his pain. Max's body sagged, his strength fading, but his eyes locked onto Anna's with wary acceptance. She tore a strip of cloth from her jacket, pressing it gently against his wound, her movements careful, deliberate. Max winced, but he did not pull away. For the first time he allowed human hands to tend his broken body. Betrayal had scarred him deeply, yet in this moment, fragile trust began to mend the cracks. The war for survival was far from over, but he was no longer alone. The storm had cleared, leaving the air sharp with silence. Anna sat close to Max, her hands trembling as she tied the cloth more securely around his wound. His amber eyes followed her carefully, no longer filled with the sharp suspicion of before, but still heavy with caution. Luna purred faintly, her body pressed to his chest as if lending strength. Anna whispered, "You're not just any dog, are you?" Her eyes narrowed as she noticed the faint outline of a faded tattoo on his inner ear. It was barely visible beneath damp fur, but it marked him as once belonging to a service program. "You were trained," she murmured in awe, brushing the fur back gently. Max stiffened at her touch, memories flooding in of structured commands, loyalty tested, and eventual betrayal when he became a burden. His scar burned, not just from battle but from the truth of what he once was. The revelation shook Anna. This wasn't simply a stray, this was a protector cast aside by those he had once served. Anna's breath caught as her fingers hovered over the mark. "They used you and left you," she whispered, sorrow deep in her tone. Max turned his head slightly, eyes clouded with the memory of commands shouted, loyalty demanded, and then abandonment when injury made him less useful. He shifted uncomfortably, body heavy with both pain and shame, though neither truly belonged to him. Luna rubbed her small head against his chin, her soft purr grounding him in the present. Anna said firmly, "You're not broken, you're brave." Her words hung in the air, fragile but fierce. Max's chest rose sharply, as though testing the truth in her statement. He did not understand her words, but her voice carried a promise different from the one that once betrayed him. His gaze softened slightly, the first crack in the wall he had built. For Anna, this revelation deepened her resolve. She would not let this dog suffer the same fate twice. The road ahead stretched empty, but for Anna and the animals, it carried both danger and possibility. She adjusted her satchel, glancing at Max's scar with worry before rising to her feet. "Come with me," she urged, her tone steady. Max hesitated, paws pressed against wet ground, body weary, but unwilling to abandon the fragile bond forming between them. He pushed himself upright slowly, favoring his wounded side. His legs trembled, yet he stood tall, ears forward, eyes fixed on Anna. Luna bounded clumsily, her paws wet with mud, but her trust was unquestioning. For Max, every step felt like a test of loyalty to something new, a chance to follow not commands, but compassion. He limped forward, falling into stride with Anna, the first time he had chosen willingly to follow a human since his betrayal. The revelation of his past no longer weighed as heavily. With Anna's presence it became part of a story still unfolding. As they journeyed, the group approached an abandoned barn, its walls weathered and doors ajar, offering shelter from the long road. Anna guided them inside, dust swirling as the door creaked. Max entered cautiously, nose twitching at scents of straw, wood, and faint traces of old animals long gone. Luna leapt forward, exploring fearlessly, her small frame weaving between broken beams. Anna spread a blanket from her satchel across the straw, motioning for Max to rest. He lowered himself reluctantly, eyes darting between shadows, ever alert. Anna sat beside him, her voice low. "You were meant to protect. That purpose is still yours if you choose." Max blinked slowly, her words striking chords deep within his scarred soul. He shifted, pressing closer to Luna, who curled by his chest. For the first time in years, Max allowed himself to feel not just survival, but belonging. Night fell again, stars scattered faintly across the sky as the barn settled into silence. Max rested, his breathing slow but steady, Scar aching less under Anna's makeshift care. Luna purred in sleep, her tiny body curled against his chest. Anna leaned back against the barn wall, her eyes weary but filled with determination. She whispered, "We'll find a way forward together." Max's ears flicked at her voice, his gaze lifting briefly to meet hers. In that quiet exchange, something shifted. The revelation of his past no longer defined him as broken. It revealed his strength, his loyalty, and his capacity to protect again. The betrayal that once destroyed him had forged resilience. He closed his eyes, not from despair, but from a fragile peace. For the first time, the scars of yesterday began to feel like the foundation of tomorrow. The morning sun painted the barn with gold, but peace was short-lived. The sound of boots crunching on gravel pierced the silence. Max's ears shot upright, muscles tensing as growls rumbled low in his chest. Anna stiffened, her hand tightening around her satchel. A harsh voice rang out, "So here's where you ran off with the mutt." Jake, the man who abandoned Max, stood at the entrance, eyes cold, anger simmering beneath his sneer. Max lunged forward, placing himself between Anna and the intruder, amber eyes burning with recognition. The scar on his shoulder seemed to pulse, memory of betrayal igniting into fury. Luna hissed from behind him, her tiny frame trembling. Jake spat, "That dog's worthless. Should've put him down when I had the chance." Anna rose, her voice steady but defiant. "He's worth more than you'll ever see." The air thickened with tension. Max growled deeper, every muscle braced for the fight that would decide his family's fate. Jake stepped further inside, his boots thudding against the wooden floor, his sneer curling into mockery. "You think this mutt will save you? He's nothing but broken." Max's body quivered with restrained fury, his tail stiff, his growl vibrating through the barn walls. Anna moved beside him, her arm outstretched protectively. "He's not broken, he's brave." Jake scoffed, pulling a metal rod from behind his back, its edge gleaming. Luna hissed again, her green eyes glowing fiercely in the dim light. Max's heart pounded, scar aching as if calling him to action. He remembered the night he was thrown away, the cold pavement, the cruel laughter. But this time, there was no retreat. This time, he had something worth protecting. His amber eyes locked on Jake with unshakable resolve, body lowering as he prepared to strike. The past had made him stronger, and betrayal would no longer define his end. The clash came suddenly. Jake swung the rod down, but Max lunged with ferocity, his teeth clamping against the metal as he twisted, forcing Jake off balance. Anna shouted, her voice breaking through the chaos, "Fight, Max!" The barn echoed with snarls and grunts, dust swirling in the golden shafts of sunlight. Jake staggered, fury etched across his face as he tried to strike again, but Max's body slammed against him, powerful despite his wound. Luna darted into the shadows, her tiny body safe, but her eyes glowing with fear and hope. Max's scar split anew, blood streaking his fur, but he did not falter. Every ounce of strength fueled his charge, his loyalty no longer to commands, but to love and survival. Jake fell to his knees, rage twisting his features as Max loomed above, growl shaking the very air. For once, Max was no longer the abandoned. He was the protector. Jake roared in fury, shoving Max off with brute force. The dog hit the ground hard, his ribs aching, but he rose again, lips curled in defiance. Blood stained his fur, but his amber eyes burned brighter than the pain. Anna cried out, rushing forward, but Jake raised the rod toward her. Max surged between them, body colliding with Jake's chest, sending the man crashing into the barn wall. Boards splintered, dust showering the air. Jake gasped, wind knocked from him as Max stood tall, his growl a thunderous vow. Luna darted to Anna, pressing close to her side, her purrs frantic. Anna placed her hand on Max's back, whispering, "We're with you." Her voice fused with his fury, strengthening him. Jake staggered up once more, rage wild in his eyes, but Max stepped forward, shoulders squared, no longer trembling. Betrayal had forged him, but love had transformed him into something greater. A defender. The final clash shook the barn. Jake lunged with the rod raised high, but Max sprang with unstoppable force, his body a blur of loyalty and fury. The two collided, Jake crashing backward into a pile of broken boards, the rod clattering uselessly away. Max landed firmly, chest heaving, his amber eyes locked on the man who had once discarded him. Jake groaned, pinned by his own weakness, his rage unraveling into defeat. Anna rushed to Max's side, her hands resting on his scarred shoulder, whispering, "It's over." Luna pressed against his leg, her green eyes wide with relief. Max stood over the fallen man, not as a victim of betrayal, but as a guardian reborn. His growl faded into silence, replaced by heavy breaths that carried the weight of survival. The barn grew still, filled not with fear, but with the unshakable truth. Max had fought not just to survive, but to protect the family he had finally found. The barn lay still, dust slowly settling after the storm of conflict. Jake had fled into the shadows, his threats echoing only in memory, leaving Anna, Max, and Luna alone in the quiet aftermath. Max collapsed onto the straw, his chest heaving, scar raw yet proud upon his shoulder. Anna knelt beside him, her hands trembling as she whispered, "You saved us." Her eyes filled with tears, not of fear but gratitude. Luna pressed against Max's muzzle, her tiny body vibrating with purrs as if offering him comfort. Max lowered his head, amber eyes weary but no longer clouded with doubt. For the first time his pain felt like proof of strength. The air smelled of wood and sunlight, far different from the damp despair of the underpass. Anna placed her hand on his paw, promising, "You'll never be alone again." The battle was over, but the healing had only begun. Anna guided Max carefully out of the barn into the morning sun, his limp steady but strong. Luna trotted alongside, tail raised proudly as though she too had fought her battle. The air was warm, filled with birdsong, a stark contrast to the chaos left behind. Anna whispered encouragement, her voice soft yet steady, "We'll find a place where you can heal." Max's amber eyes scanned the horizon, no longer searching for danger, but for possibility. His body bore scars, but his heart carried a new resolve. Every step forward was a rejection of the pain that once defined him. Luna leapt lightly at his side, her green eyes alive with trust, as if reminding him he was no longer carrying this fight alone. For the first time Max felt the bond of family, fragile yet unbreakable, guiding him beyond survival toward belonging. They reached a quiet stream, its waters sparkling under midday light. Anna knelt to wash Max's wound, her hands gentle but sure as she pressed cool water over the scar. Max flinched but did not resist, his gaze locked on her face as if weighing trust with every breath. Luna perched on a rock nearby, her reflection rippling in the current as she mewed softly. Anna said, "We'll take it one day at a time," her words both a promise and a vow to herself. Max lowered his muzzle to the stream, drinking deeply, the water cleansing not just his thirst, but the ache of betrayal. For the first time he felt something other than survival. He felt the stirrings of peace. The stream's steady flow mirrored his resolve. Though broken, he could still move forward, still protect, still love. His scar no longer marked weakness but resilience. Days passed, and together they made their way through fields and towns, each night safer than the one before. Max grew stronger, his limp less pronounced, though his scar always reminded him of where he had come from. Anna found odd jobs for shelter and food, always keeping Max and Luna close. At night they huddled by small fires, the warmth chasing away the chill of fear. Anna often whispered stories, her voice soothing, though Max did not understand the words, only their kindness. Luna sprawled across his back, her purrs blending with the crackle of flame. Each moment stitched their broken pieces together, weaving survival into belonging. The world was still harsh, but within this fragile circle, Max no longer felt alone. His loyalty, once betrayed, had found a purpose again, not in obedience, but in love. On the horizon stood a small town, its houses warm with life, smoke curling gently from chimneys. Anna paused, looking at Max with quiet resolve. "This could be home," she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. Max lifted his head, amber eyes fixed on the town, his body steady, no longer trembling at the thought of humans. Luna purred at his paws, gazing at the horizon, as though sensing a future brighter than the roads they had walked. Together they descended the hill, step by step, carrying scars, but also strength born from them. The world that once cast Max aside now felt less daunting, for he had found a bond stronger than fear. Their story was not finished, it was only beginning. The journey had been carved in pain, but ahead lay hope. Max's tail lifted slightly, no longer in fear, but in promise. The town welcomed them cautiously, curious eyes watching as Anna led Max and Luna through the narrow streets. Children pointed, some with fear, some with awe at the scarred dog walking proudly by her side. Max's amber eyes scanned each face, not with suspicion but calm vigilance. Luna trotted confidently, her green eyes wide at the colors and sounds. Anna kept her head high, whispering softly, "We belong here." For Max, every scent and sound stirred both wariness and wonder. The betrayal that once shattered him no longer ruled his steps. Instead, the quiet bond of family guided him. He had fought for survival, and now he was walking into something new: acceptance. The townsfolk, seeing Anna's steady stride and Max's protective grace, began to soften, nodding as they passed. For the first time, the world did not feel like an enemy. It felt like a chance. They found a modest home at the edge of town, its wooden fence worn but welcoming. Anna spoke to the elderly caretaker, her voice filled with sincerity. "We're just looking for safety." The old woman studied Max with wary eyes, noticing his scar, his posture, his quiet strength. Max stood steady, not growling, not retreating, but watching with loyal patience. Luna mewed softly at his side, her innocence softening the moment. After a long pause, the woman nodded. "You'll do fine here," she said, her voice lined with understanding. Relief washed over Anna's face as she turned to Max, whispering, "We're home." Max tilted his head, ears rising, sensing the shift in her voice. For the first time, the word carried meaning. Home was not walls or fences, it was the bond he had fought to protect. That night, Max lay on a soft blanket inside the small home, Luna curled at his chest, her purrs steady as she drifted into sleep. Anna sat nearby, her eyes heavy but her smile unwavering. "You're safe now," she whispered. Max closed his eyes, ears twitching at the quiet hum of crickets outside. His scar throbbed faintly, but it no longer felt like a burden, it felt like proof. Proof of the battle he had fought, the family he had earned, the betrayal he had survived. The warmth of the room contrasted sharply with the cold nights under bridges and barns. "Aye." Max's breathing slowed, his chest rising in peace, not fear. For the first time since abandonment, he slept not as a stray but as part of something greater. Survival had led him here, but love would keep him. Days turned into weeks, and life settled into gentle rhythm. Max guarded the home with quiet dignity, patrolling the yard at dawn, his amber eyes scanning with purpose. Luna played in the grass, chasing shadows, her laughter like muse filling the air. Anna worked tirelessly, yet every evening she returned to sit by Max, stroking his scarred shoulder with gratitude. "Your family," she whispered often, and though Max could not understand the words, he felt them. The scar no longer burned with betrayal, it glowed with meaning. The pain of the past had forged the loyalty of the present. Max stood at the gate one evening, the horizon painted in gold and crimson, his posture steady, his tail raised. He was not the abandoned stray anymore. He was guardian, protector, and beloved. On a quiet evening the world slowed, and the family sat together beneath the open sky. Stars shimmered above, cool wind brushing through the grass. Max lay close to Anna, his body steady, his amber eyes reflecting starlight. Luna sprawled across his back, her tiny paws curled in sleep, her trust complete. Anna rested her hand gently on his scarred shoulder, whispering softly, "We made it." For Max, the journey of betrayal, pain, pain and survival had ended here, not in despair but in love. His eyes closed, not in weariness, but in peace. The night hummed with life, yet within their circle, silence spoke louder. He had fought for survival, and found something far greater. Loyalty had been tested, scarred, and renewed. As the stars glimmered above, Max knew he was home,